Hey, welcome in to another week of the 573 report here on PowerMizzou.com. I am Gabe DeArmond. Briefly, because I hit the wrong button, Mitchell Forde was there on your screen. I then made him disappear. He will come back shortly. But before we do that, I want to make sure that you know about our sponsor on this show every Wednesday, 573 Tees. You can find them in downtown Columbia. You can find them on the internet at 573tees.com. Doing a lot of NIL stuff with Missouri athletes. They have all your regular Mizzou gear. You can get pretty much a different shirt for every Mizzou event across the calendar if you want to do that. Your wife might be a little upset that you don't have any money left for food, but hey, we encourage you to do it. We'd much rather have you support our sponsors than feed your families, if we're being honest. So if you are fortunate enough to be able to do both, do both. But if you have a choice between dinner and 573 Tees, go to 573 Tees. That's my sales pitch for the week. We will now bring Mitchell in and do want to invite you guys, if you've got comments, questions, whatever, put them in that comment section. We let them build up. We'll talk about what we want to talk about for the first little bit, and then we'll talk about what you guys want to talk about. So, Mitch, the last 4 basketball games are a win over a top 15 team, a loss where the other team would not have had to score in the second half, a loss in which the other team almost didn't score in the first half, and then a 25-point win. So we know exactly what to expect out of this team every time they take the floor.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, college basketball as a whole, is unpredictable by nature, but it does feel like Missouri is taking it to some extremes this year. You know, they lost their first 4 road games by an average of 32.3 points and then won by 25. So, I mean, yeah, try to make sense of that.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't – it's why we've been saying for 2 months, you have to let the season play out because you don't know what's going to happen any given day. I mean, do I think this team's going 12-3 the rest of the way? No. 3-12 is probably more likely, but that's not a foregone conclusion either. We have to see what happens. So since we did this last, I guess the Arkansas game was last Wednesday night. So we'll spend about as much effort on that one as it appeared Missouri did. I mean – man, Arkansas, that was like the Tennessee football game. Arkansas could have won by 70 if it wanted to.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just interesting. I really think that Missouri, especially on the road, has a deal this year where, like, if they land the first punch, they might still lose. But if they don't, then it can go south so fast. And I don't know what the cause for that is. You know, maybe it goes back to not really having a true point guard, someone who can kind of get the team, you know, settled down and dictate the tempo. I don't know if it's just, you know, I don't know what it has to do with. But we've seen it several times where, like, you know, they're down, you know, 9, 11, 12, or in this case, 15 points before the first media timeout, and it is just over. I mean, you know, and then you get games where they're down 20 at half, where they're losing by, you know, 30, 40 points. But then last night and Saturday too, they started off great, and Saturday they couldn't kind of, you know, put together the full performance, kind of wilted down the stretch. I was impressed that they at least they made some clear progress on that front last night. You know, Ole Miss hit that 3 to cut it to 10 just out of the under 8 timeout, and you started to go, I don't know. And then Mizzou, he closed the door very quickly with a 15-0 run. So. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm not trying to say that, like, this team is going to, you know, achieve anything of great magnitude this season, or that Conzo Martin's going to save his job. Like, we'll just wait and see. I'm not gonna say I have any idea what to expect Saturday. So, yeah, we'll take it one game at a time.
Yeah, well, and last Saturday I was disappointed. I thought there was a chance for a minute we were going to see the first shutout in college basketball history, or at least since they were playing with peach baskets, because A&M just didn't appear to want to score at all. But even while that was happening, we were all kind of talking like, Missouri's not really ahead by that much. Like, that didn't have a lot to do with Missouri being really good. It was just A&M was so bad for 9 minutes and then won. And then so the storyline out of the game against Ole Miss, really, to me, other than Amari Davis just figuring out, it's weird to me that a guy who is so good from 17 feet is not at all good from 20 feet, but whatever. He's figured out what he can do, and he did it to perfection, literally, on Tuesday night in Oxford. 10 for 10 from the field, 3 for 3 from the line. Whether it depends on which Missouri record is correct, the one they have online or the one they said, but he either made the most or the second most shots without a miss in the history of Missouri basketball, which is very good either way. But the story out of that game to me, they took 7 threes. I went through every single box score back to 2013 and could not find a game in which they took fewer. They took 8. I know Dave Matter, I talked to him this morning. He said it's the 4th time in the last 20 years they haven't taken 10. So he went back even further than I did. But we spent about 12 games asking Konzo, like, yo, we don't think this team's very good at shooting, right? And he said, no, they're good. They just keep shooting and they're going to go in. And then I think it was before the Alabama game, he said, all right, we've told some guys they need to stop shooting, right? So, I mean, whether you want to admit it or not, and yes, maybe it should have happened sooner, whatever, but the adjustment was clearly made because in the last 2 games, they've taken the fewest three-pointers in each game that they have ever taken under him as the head coach.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like, you know, I can understand how it's frustrating for on one hand to be like, wow, really? It took you that long to figure it out. But on the other, you know, at least an adjustment was made and the offense looks better. I mean, it kind of has for a while now when they're not shooting a lot of threes. And it's not just not shooting threes. It's not settling for threes. Like you can get some looks off of kickouts and stuff like that if Kobe Brown's doubled or someone drives and dishes out. But, you know, we've seen times this year where it's just like the offense is just either someone, you know, they pass it around the perimeter, no one really moves, they shoot a 3, or someone tries to drive one-on-one, nothing's there, they kick it out for a contested 3. Like even in the second half against Utah, you know, in that game against Alabama, in these past 2 games, it's looked a lot better when they haven't shot as many threes. And the weird thing, and, you know, Jimmy Dykes pointed this out on the broadcast last night, but I know it's something that we had mentioned before, is like, Mizzou should be worse against a zone because zones typically force you to shoot over them. But Mizzou, like when other teams play zone, they just figure it out. They're just like, oh, yeah, we should not shoot from back here. We should just like go inside into these open areas. I don't know why they can't figure that out against man. Maybe last night was like some key and they'll start doing it. But yeah, it's like, and part of it too, I do think Ole Miss way overextended its zone. Like there were times where maybe they're trying to, you know, pressure guys and generate some turnovers like Arkansas did, but like you don't need to be guarding these guys 25 feet from the basket. I promise they're not going to score from there. But like it just unlocks something for Missouri, and once they got it going, they really got it going. And yeah, I mean Amari Davis just really what he should just do that all the time. I suggest just not missing. That's a good strategy.
Yeah, it's helpful. Yeah, not only can Missouri not shoot, they don't really have a point guard, but they're really good against his own for some reason. But so you mentioned it there. So this is sports, right? Hey, what we're doing isn't working. We're going to make an adjustment. And then the next step is the other team's going to adjust to that adjustment. Well, Missouri has made the adjustment. Okay, we're going to take like 9 threes, not 29. Smart move. Now, if you are a team on Missouri's schedule, clearly what you do going into the game, and this is going to sound like an exaggeration, but to me it really isn't. I would tell my guys, you play defense with 1 foot in the paint. You never defend anything with both feet outside the paint. If they want to stand at the 3-point line and shoot, let them do it because it's been proven even if they are wide open, they're not going to make more than like 3 out of every 10. So just stay in the paint. Don't give up the drive. Don't give up the offensive rebound. We are going to put 5 guys right here around the lane and force them to beat us shooting jump shots. That's coming, right? I mean, they're about to face Nate Oates, I think, is a good coach. Bruce Pearl is a good coach. TJ Otzelberger appears to be a good coach. I can't imagine that any of those coaches are going to spend much time telling their guys, you really need to get out and guard this team at the 3-point line.
Yeah, and especially Alabama that has just seen Missouri and you know, honestly got its defense, you know, pretty much torched by Missouri a couple weeks ago. I would imagine they'll have a different plan coming in. Yeah, I mean, like, I think yours is a slight oversimplification, you know, because Mizzou
don't
actually
accuse
does have
me
some
of
guys
that.
who can hit from like the baseline and the elbow and the mid-range areas. But yes, I mean, like, there's no reason to, you know, extend out onto the, you know, deep out onto the perimeter or, you know, worry too much about helping off of shooters. I mean, you need to have 2 guys around Kobe Brown at all times. You need to have someone in, you know, in and around the paint area who can help off drivers and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, other teams are going to continue to adjust. And frankly, I mean, Mizzou has shown that, you know, from the bulk of the season, it is not like that. What we saw last night is not typical. Like, I mean, yes, maybe they could, you know, they found something they could keep it up, but probably it was just a good game. I mean, it's their best shooting performance since 2017. I don't think they're likely to replicate that.
Yeah, and a bad night against for an Ole Miss team that was missing some guys. And The next part of the schedule, not a lot of fun. I have a feeling Alabama will be ready for Missouri on Saturday. Auburn brings the number one team and potentially the number one draft pick into Columbia. I would like to know how excited Jabari Smith is to see Red Panda. I feel like that's going to be the big storyline of that game. And then they go up to Hilton Coliseum and face Iowa State, coached one of the better turnaround stories in the country, coached by a guy that Desiree Reed-Francois hired at UNLV just a couple years ago. So could be a rough stretch coming up. I don't really know what the schedule is after that, but I think over the next week and a half, like if you could find a way to get one, that'd be a hell of an effort.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they'll be significant underdogs in all those games. Basically, at this point, like, and I get why it happens, but I just feel like the swing is kind of funny where it's like, they get destroyed by Arkansas, and understandably so. I understand why people were upset from that game. I'm not trying to say that it deserved people to be measured because it was atrocious, but like, everything is just like, oh, it's got to be gone. He needs to be gone tomorrow. And in fact, people wanted to believe it when it was reported that he was gone tomorrow. And then today you just see it all. Well, if they were just had this one piece, and I can see it. We'll be right back in here by, in like 10 days or whenever after these next 3 games, I'm sure, to everything is terrible and unfixable, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's just going to continue to be ebbs and flows.
Yeah, and so we'll be back in 2 months and we'll talk about whatever has happened at that point. Speaking of things happening, probably there have been like 3 Missouri-related football stories since we started this show 12 minutes ago, because that's the way the last few weeks have gone. And we'll get to the specifics, but I think like we've had a lot of talk about, hey, the transfer portal or NIL or what's breaking college football and all that. And this isn't breaking college football. And I want to be clear. I don't feel bad for the coaches because the coaches are the ones that devise this calendar and they make billions of dollars. But something's got to get fixed here where, I mean, from a simple standpoint of if you work around college football, and I'm talking coaches, I'm talking support staff, I'm talking you cover it, whatever, like there need to be a couple hours where you can just be like, okay, well, nothing's going to happen here, right? We have compacted everything into this period, but also it's just because of the recruiting calendar, it's all year. I don't know when coaches are supposed to take 3 days off and see their kids and stuff because every day is either a new transfer or a coach leaves or this happens. There's got to be a better way than what we're doing here these last couple weeks.
Yeah, for sure. I saw that Eli Drinkwitz tweeted on Sunday night that he was at the Chiefs game, and I was honestly like, oh, wow, that's kind of risky. I mean, like, what if someone wants to commit? Because that's always happening these days. It also, though, was like, oh, I guess I can relax and understand that maybe that's not going to happen over these next few hours. But
and
sure now.
I can promise, having been in Arrowhead Stadium, if somebody tried to commit, Eli Drinkwitz would not know. He was not getting a text message there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it is crazy. And it's, extra so this year, and we said this last year too. It's just like the COVID year added so much onto, there's just more people with eligibility, so there's more people transferring, and then you've got, all this stuff is new. I do think the market will continue to correct itself a little bit as players use up that one-time transfer, and there's fewer players for the same number of spots. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just the calendar. We went right from the at the end of the season, like while games were still being played, having the early signing period to the postseason to then it's immediately like now onto the 2023 class but the 2022 class still isn't finished. You got transfers going on, but like last Friday the visit period opened up, so they got to start showing the 2023 guys that their priorities. Like it, yeah. I like you said, I'm not going to feel bad for anyone who's making a ton of money, but like for some of these assistant coaches, that's rough.
Well, and I had somebody in my mailbag ask this morning, when do the 2024 rankings come out? And I'm doing this show on a backup computer because I threw my laptop into the snow at that point. What's left of it, I don't know. Eventually, I can't think about 2024. We'll get to some of the individual players and talk about some of the actual specifics about this here in a couple minutes. And again, if you've got questions or things you want to talk about, feel free to put them in the comment section there, and we'll get to it. But kind of big picture, I think Missouri took 8 transfers last year. If my memory serves right, it was somewhere around that number. They're at 6 right now. I anticipate that getting to 8 because I still think they're going to.
They're at 7 right now.
Okay, then I think they'll get to 9 because I think they're going to take a tight end and a linebacker. But like, not only are things going to slow down because, like you said, the eligibility and all that. At some point, your program, and I'm not talking about like next year, still has to be based on the guys you're recruiting, the 4-year players here. If you are in the portal for 8 and 9 guys, and I understand fully why Eli Drinkwitz has been the last 2 years. This is not a criticism. But in 2024, if he's going in and trying to fill 9 spots in the portal, because when you're bringing transfers in, you're not bringing them in to sit. You're bringing them into play. If you've got that many holes on your team heading into year 5, that means your recruiting hasn't been good enough. So I think just naturally across the country, especially at places where there aren't coaching changes, you are going to see a little bit of a, well, hey, we've been here 3 or 4 years. Like, we feel pretty good about some of the guys we have. We just don't have as many spots we need to fill.
Right. Yeah. And yes, I think, and Eli Drinkwitz kind of talked about that. He outlined that strategy when he talked to us in December, saying like, transfer guys are to replace guys who already left. It's not like we need X number of people in this recruiting class and we're going to use transfers to take some of those, because then your class balance gets totally out of whack. And yeah, I mean, the foundation of a team is still high school recruiting, and the teams that are doing that the best year over year are the teams that are winning the national championships. And I can understand the allure of the transfer portal, and especially for fans, it's like, ooh, like I don't want to wait for this kid to get good. Like I just want to go get like someone who's already done it and be like Michigan State or Kentucky. But those are definitely the exceptions. So yeah, I don't know. I agree. I'm not going to say that it's bad that they took 7 transfers in this class, and I think they might even get to 10, because I think they're going to take a linebacker, a tight end, and then like I wouldn't be surprised if it's like best available. Someone comes open in like the late spring, early summer, something like that. I mean, they've taken guys like that each of the last 2 years. So yeah, but I definitely think that if you're taking that many, say 2 years from now, that's probably not a good thing.
And so let's talk about some of these guys individually. First, you were talking about the eligibility. We have to start with Mitch. What were you doing in June of 2015?
I was a student at Mizzou. I was not enrolled in classes over the summer, but I think that summer I was in Columbia, like working at swim camps and swimming.
Okay, yeah, my kids at that point were, my oldest son had just graduated from high school. He is now in the middle of his second year of a full-time job. My youngest son was 12. He is a freshman in college. Tyrone Hopper was a North Carolina football commitment who now is a Missouri commitment, entering his 7th year of college football, and this is incredible, and I love it. Like, we're going to do a story at some point about the NFL players that are older than Tyrone Hopper. Like, I read I think I read this morning that Lamar Jackson might be 24 years old, and I think Tyrone Hopper is 24 years old. Like, they might be the same age.
Yeah, that's fairly remarkable. Yeah, I just want to talk to him about, like, how old are you and how weird is that? And like, is it strange to be with 18-year-olds on the same team? So yeah,
on the road games, he's going to be hanging out with us. He's like, I can't keep up with my teammates. Where are you guys going to dinner tonight?
Probably true. Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy. It's one of those things that you only could have gotten here because of the COVID deal. I did see someone posted on our board today that there is an 8th-year player in college football. So he's not. I was going to say he has to be like tied for the record of longest college career ever, but alas, not the case. But still, yeah. I as for what to expect from him on the field, I don't know, because he's missed so much time due to injury. It looks like Mizzou wants him as a defensive end, not a linebacker. I would imagine he's more of a depth piece, but like you said, you don't bring in a transfer just to sit on the bench. Like, I would imagine they think he can at least help out in the regular rotation.
Yeah, Jake B says that Nasir Brooks, who played for Ole Miss last night, is 25, which is incredible. I don't know how that happened, but he did 3 Mormon missions before enrolling at Ole Miss, apparently. The other one of the more recent transfers, Nate Pete from Stanford. I did a radio interview, and I've seen a lot of people saying, well, obviously he's not the starting running back. Well, why not? He's done more in college than anybody Missouri has on the roster. So Elijah Young did not play last year, basically, until Missouri didn't have another choice. Michael Cox, we kept hearing about how, well, we were going to play him, and then something happened, and we just didn't play him. And then, B.J. Harris had one game with like 14 carries, but other than that, he was clearly behind Cox and Dawson Downing. Taj Butts didn't get on the field. Tavoris Jones, highly rated, but he's going to be a true freshman. Why wouldn't Nate Pete think he is in line to be Missouri's starting running back? He's done more in college than anybody else on this roster has.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, 3 years at Stanford. And yeah, I mean, like if you made me right now, you said you can only pick one guy to lead Mizzou in carries this year, I would probably pick Nate Pete because, like you said, I mean, it just makes the most sense between all the options as far as his as his resume. I still think it makes the most sense that Mizzou is going to end up just kind of rotating 3 or 4 guys, and obviously, one of them will probably play a little bit more than others, but that's not the way Eli Drinkwitz is operated. So I think it's kind of hard for people to wrap their heads around it. And it also means I could be way off on that. And I just don't see like the 25 carry a guy person on this roster. But who knows? Regardless, I think it's very safe to say that Nate Pete is going to be heavily involved.
And I can also safely say, having talked to some people, Nate Pete did not leave Stanford to carry the ball less. I mean, the reason he left Stanford was that he wanted somewhere where he felt like he could get more touches. So I don't want to say he's been promised that because I really don't think coaches do that. I don't think coaches say, we guarantee you're going to start here. But I think he knows he's going into spring football as the guy who has the best chance to start, and somebody's going to have to come beat him out. The other transfer, I don't know, Dylan Spencer just kind of back out of nowhere, I don't know. I don't know, man. Greg Taylor's coming back. Nate Strong's coming back. Just get the whole band back together.
Yeah, he's back. That came out of nowhere. Yeah, for those who don't remember, he was a 2020 signee and actually played in 2 games as a true freshman, started one of them, which shows you the state that Missouri's offensive line was in. He got in a fight at Florida, got suspended, and then promptly transferred, which, I don't think was a disciplinary thing. I think Mizzou wanted to keep him around. I do know that there was some talk about him being a little homesick at the time. He's from Mississippi. He transferred back to Jackson State, didn't play at all there, entered the transfer portal again in September, which, I mean, if I knew about it at the time, I completely forgot about. And then just yesterday pops up enrolled at Mizzou. So, yeah, I mean, he's back.
So he was involved in that Dan Mullen brawl at Florida?
Oh, yeah, he was one of the ones who got a game suspension or something like that.
Okay, so he transferred, Markel Lutzy transferred, Trey Williams transferred, Dan Mullen fired. One of these days we'll do an oral history of the halftime brawl in the swamp and how everyone lost their jobs because of it. But okay, I mean, I think those are the 3 new transfers. So want to hit up, we've got a few questions over here, so we'll get to them. I'm just going in order of when they were asked, so we will get to yours eventually. Michael wants to know, did Mizzou lose the portal, or is Mizzou happy with their roster? And before we get into that, I want to say I saw Justin Rowland from our Kentucky site tweeted this morning. He said that, people are already grading the portal and deciding who did well and who did poorly. Dari Rosenthal transferred to Kentucky in May last year. There's going to be a whole nother wave of kids that think they're going to win jobs in spring football that for one reason or another don't win jobs in spring football and then enter the transfer portal in April or May and find a home somewhere in the summer. So, well, I guess they have to by May 1st, but they will declare by May 1st. They won't necessarily find a new home, but we aren't done with this. This is like giving a final grade after midterms.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's, and I understand, especially for Missouri fans, this is just kind of what's going on right now. I think people are kind of bored with basketball. They want to just, react to all of the comings and goings in the portal. But yeah, it's early on in the process. People are freaking out about the tight end position. And yeah, Mizzou might end up with no good tight ends, but we don't know yet that because they're going to get someone. So yeah, a couple things. One, it's not done yet. Two, even if Mizzou was unhappy with its roster, no one is going to say that. They are not going to say yeah, no, we really struck out in the portal this year. We're probably going to win 3 games. I think they must feel at least decent about it. So yeah, I know why there's a little bit of angst about it, that Mizzou didn't measure up to a Kentucky, who you mentioned in the portal last year. So, a few of the guys maybe didn't make as instant of an impact as people hoped. And then losing Mekhi Winko hurt some. But if you just look at this year, this transfer cycle, I would say it's probably a net positive. Obviously, losing Mekhi Winko is a bummer, but you bring in a guy who, could be just about as good at defensive tackle, a guy who played quite a bit for a really good defense last year. You got a guy from Clemson at safety who I think has a chance to start. We mentioned Nate Pete already. So, and I mean, clearly they like Vince Pulgar enough that, he seems like there's a good chance he's going to start at center. So I mean, like, I don't know that necessarily all of them wow you. There's definitely, some guys who are a little bit of a head scratcher, but overall, at this point, I'm just going to wait and see what happens on the field. I know that's not a good internet take.
Right. Kind of along those lines, and you mentioned it, Kyle said, any concern there haven't been linebacker or transfer or tight end transfer commits. It seemed like those are the two biggest needs. And I don't know that concern is the right word because, like you said, they're going to take somebody probably at those positions. However, I do think it is a fair criticism that they offered some tight ends and they offered a lot of linebackers, and those guys have ended up other places. So that doesn't mean they won't get a good one. It doesn't mean that they won't get one that actually ends up being better than the guys they offered, but they have missed a lot of their top targets, especially at linebacker. And tight end, they really only missed kind of 1.5 because TJ Banks wanted to commit and they said hang on. And then by the time that Jake Tonjes declared for the NFL draft, it was too late to go back to TJ Banks and say, no, we want you. So they missed there. But linebacker, I mean, there was a run of like 6 or 7 straight guys where it was almost like they were waiting for a Missouri offer to then say where they were going, and it was not Missouri.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to argue that the staff is giving, 100% its top choices at all these spots and like it's absolutely cleaning up. But I also just think that, we'll wait and see before declaring that the portal that, it's been a failure or anything like that.
Okay, back to basketball, and hypotheticals are our favorite. So I want to say first, assuming these jobs become available, we do not know at this point if Missouri's job is going to be in this pool, but we're answering your hypothetical question because we said we would, or hypothetical. I don't know how that relates to just being regular-thetical, but Jason says, rank these jobs if they all come open: Mizzou, Georgia, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. Is there any way Missouri's not the best job on that list?
I mean, no, I can't really think of one. I mean, Mizzou's recent history has been perhaps the worst, if not, just as bad as the worst of those. I don't know, Georgia's never done really much of anything, but, I mean, you still have some advantages you don't at all the other places. For one, at all those other places, 100% guaranteed the football is going to be the king. And football's
and baseball's going to be second.
Right. And football's a little bit more of a priority here, but yeah, I mean, you have more of a basketball following. And I mean, other than that, like, you're in the same league, you're talking about probably similar, resources. I know Mizzou's facilities are considered pretty nice. I've never seen anyone else's basketball facilities, so I can't tell you for sure. But like, yeah, I have no reason to certainly think Mizzou would be below any of those.
Yeah, Ole Miss has a nice new building, and I would say on this list, they probably care the second most about basketball, but they've never been as good as Missouri has, really. South Carolina went to a Final Four, but they weren't even selling out then. Georgia isn't going to know there's a basketball game for a minimum of 2 more years. I mean, they're still like people laying on the side of the highway hungover from celebrating the football national title in Georgia. So they're not going to notice that. Tyler Wynn wants to know, have you heard anything that led Konzo to finally reining in the 3-point shooting? I mean, Mitch, common sense would tell me it was that he saw the same team playing we did and finally just admitted, my guys need to be closer to the basket because they can't make it from that far away.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that entering last night, they were 355th out of 358 Division I teams in 3-point shooting. So, yeah, I think it's just as simple as watching and adapting.
Okay. Oh, now we're getting into my second favorite thing. Beyond hypothetical coaching openings, it's Twitter tweets here. Magic Man says, I read a tweet where Wingo's mom said that the city of Columbia let her son down. Maybe she's referring to that he didn't get part of NIL. Look, I'm just going to plead the fifth. I didn't see the tweet. The only tweet I have seen from Mekhi Wingo's mom said something along the lines of, there's people out there saying things about me that aren't true, and stop it. So I'm not going to speculate about a tweet I didn't see about a situation I don't know. But, it wouldn't be impossible to see players on this team thinking, hey, maybe could I get some of those deals that, say, an incoming freshman who hasn't yet played a game is getting.
Yeah, no, I mean that was always going to be one of the dangers of NIL, and it was something people rightly brought up, as an issue, is the locker room thing. That said, I don't think that I never thought it was maybe enough to stop it. I mean, it's the same as it is in every workforce in America, where everyone gets different amounts of attention and money, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I also have no reason to actually. I mean, like I don't know if that's what she was talking about. It would be pure speculation. I mean, I know that a lot of people when he entered the portal were immediately like, "Oh, highest bidder, he got a better deal." Well, he went to go play with his high school coach, so I really don't know that NIL was that big of a factor there.
Yeah, it wasn't a big shock where he went. And Kyle, we'll come back to your other question, but this is kind of along the same lines. Michael says, with Wingo's coach at LSU, how much will that affect St. Louis recruiting? I mean, I saw that LSU offered Christian Gray, a DeSmet kid who obviously I don't know if he would have played for Robert or not, but that's where Robert used to work. He certainly has a relationship with Wingo. That could be a factor. I don't think Missouri's getting Christian Gray, regardless of whether LSU does, to be quite honest. I mean, I don't know. It's a factor, but do I think all of a sudden that LSU is going to turn into this place that just walks in and gets anybody out of St. Louis at once? Not really. And as far as the second part of the question, I know Mitch really has some thoughts and wants to address why St. Louis has so much negativity toward Mizzou. I know that's really in your wheelhouse. So
yeah, well, I mean, for the first part, yes, you'll probably see LSU get involved a little bit more in recruiting St. Louis, but I think it's going to be, there's always kids where they're going to get national type offers, and those same kids might now get LSU offers, and it's just one more school out of a long list that you're going to have to beat. And if Mizzou was going to beat, the likes of, Alabama and Ohio State and Clemson and whoever else for that kid, they could probably beat Steeples and LSU. And if they weren't, they're not. But LSU's, I mean, they recruit on a national level. They're not going to suddenly start offering 10 kids a year from St. Louis.
And also,
the negativity towards Mizzou, I mean, it seems to me like Mizzou's recruiting pretty well in St. Louis over the past few years. Like, they're never going to get everyone. So,
well, and also, if you're Brian Kelly and you're saying, I want to hire a high school coach that's going to give me access to a city with tons of talent. No disrespect, you're not hiring a dude from St. Louis. You're going to hire a dude from L.A. or Miami or Dallas or Atlanta. I mean, St. Louis has some good talent and more than it used to, but nobody is confusing St. Louis with one of the top 10 high school football player producing cities in the country. If you just want a guy that hey, he can bring me a bunch of players, go hire St. John Bosco's coach or somebody out of Miami Northwestern, something like that. We'll wrap it up with because I wanted to save this one because I think there's a number of ways we could go with it. Kyle says, if JT Daniels does enter the portal, I saw he was going to, I don't know if he has or hasn't or what, but would that be the type of QB who would make sense if Drink isn't happy with the current guys? Let's leave the end of that off as far as not being happy with the current guys. Because if he wasn't happy with the current guys, I think he would have pursued some quarterback more heavily than he has. JT Daniels, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's hard without being a real QB scout, because I would think Drinkwitz would know better than me. It's the type of quarterback that we said all along, okay, that's the only way we could see it, right? Is a guy who's he's clearly an upgrade. You kind of can't say no. I don't know how many years of eligibility JT Daniels has left. That's a factor. If it's just one, then that makes even more sense, because you're probably not rushing Sam Horn out the door or anything like that, endangering. He can probably be okay with being a backup for a year. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be someone of that caliber if you're going to bring in a transfer, because you're probably going to see Tyler Macon and Brady Cook leave. That said, I mean, it really comes down to the Mizzou staff's evaluation of him. They've coached against him. They know quarterbacks better than me. If they think he's as good as his high school rating was and he just needs to stay healthy to unlock that, then sure. If they think, he's kind of a bust, then I don't know if it's worth it.
And it is worth pointing out that since that high school rating, he lost the job at USC to Keaton Slovis, who then transferred. And then all year long, couldn't beat out Stetson Bennett, who Georgia fans insisted was going to be the one thing that held them back from winning a national title, which obviously didn't happen. And I don't mean to use that to downgrade Stetson Bennett, because it was a great story and he won a national title. So he flipped the double bird to everybody and then got drunk and went on the Today Show 2 hours later. So good for him. But I mean, it would not If they're going to take a quarterback, yes, that's the kind of situation that makes some sense. But I'm not sold necessarily that they would go after JT Daniels if he were to enter the portal. It's possible, but I don't think it's a no-brainer because, again, with the portal, like I think people are treating this so much like monopoly money. These are still people. Your roster, your locker room is still made up of kids that you have to get all on the same page, and you can't just every year be bringing in kids to replace. If your message is, well, you need to stay here and fight it out, well, then quit going and grabbing a kid for 1 year to replace a kid who has been here for 2 years trying to fight it out, right? So that's where the whole coach message about the portal rings hollow. Well, back in my day, we stuck around and we didn't leave at the first sign of adversity. Well, you sure aren't turning down kids who are leaving other schools, right? So it's a little bit hypocritical there. I would have to say, if somebody made me guess, I would say Missouri probably wouldn't really go after JT Daniels, but it's nothing but a guess.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying, like, if they do decide to, it would make sense to me. I would understand why if they think he's good enough. But I also, if you made me guess, I would say they're not going to end up pursuing him or any other quarterback in this cycle.
Okay, so that was going to be the last thing, but there's one more, and this has to be on the no more. I won't acknowledge any more questions after this. I don't care how many you ask, because this is the only way we can end this show. So thank you, Jonah, for popping in to say that Antar Thompson is the eligibility king. I saw on Twitter that he's looking for a grad year. He graduated high school in 2013. There's no possible way Antar Thompson can still have college football eligibility left, is there?
I think he finished up at Mizzou with a year still left, and he hasn't played anywhere else. I don't know about the clock thing, the number of years to play a number of years. I don't know, but I guess theoretically, maybe he is actually the same age as me, by the way. Like we are the same age. So
I will say,
that would be right. Wow.
Like I always say, I don't care where kids go to school. I am totally breaking that rule here. If Missouri is not immediately on the phone to offer Antar Thompson his final year at the University of Missouri, I will be extremely upset. This is a story that has to happen. Graduate transfer, Dr. Antar Thompson playing at the University of Missouri in 2022.
Yeah, at age 27.
Amazing. All right. Well, Mitch, we'll send you off to get on Twitter and hunt down Antar and find out when he is enrolling at the University of Missouri.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate Mitch hanging out with us. Appreciate all you guys. A lot of questions. Good day. Kind of plenty of stuff has happened over the last week. We hope we caught you up on most of it. Who knows what happened here over the last 40 minutes while we were yapping and hopefully passing your lunch hour here on this Wednesday. Want to remind you once again, 573 Tees brings this thing to you every single week. If Antar Thompson somehow ends up back in Missouri, I can promise you, because I will pay for it myself, that 573 Tees will need to get like an Antar Thompson old man football shirt out to the masses. So you heard it here first, guys. We're campaigning Antar Thompson, graduate year 2022 at the University of Missouri. We're all pulling for it. It needs to happen. So get ready. Go to 573 Tees. Find your gear. Get some other stuff first, but await the Antar Thompson shirt. We're all hoping it happens. Thanks for hanging out. We'll be back next Wednesday. Plenty of stuff going to happen between now and then. We'll keep you up to date on all of it on the site, powermizzou.com. Every now and then we tweet. You know where to follow us. So thanks for hanging out, and we'll talk to you later.